Okay, we saw in the previous example how we could use a cumulative frequency graph to get, here it was, medians and quartiles that we could use to actually compare data. We can actually go one step further than that, and we can plot the medians and quartiles on a box plot and use those to do the comparison or to help with the comparison. So, in order to do a box plot, all right, we've got it already drawn for us for group 1. Now what this means is, here's the very lowest value, so that's not terribly interesting because it may not be typical of the data. Here's the very highest value, again that's an extreme value, but the interesting ones are this line is at the median and the bottom and top of the box are at the lower and upper quartiles. So those labels show you the 5 numbers that are shown by the box plot. Okay, so I need to find the 5 numbers for this. This is group 2, so I'm going to lob all of that data in OneVar statistics on my calculator. Okay, so I think I've got my data on my calculator. If I go into my OneVar calculations, then it's telling me on the second page that I've got a median of 33.5, I've got quartiles of 29 and 42, so let's make a note of these. So here they are, including the maximum value, which is on the third screen of data on the calculator. And notice I've clearly stated all of these values, so all my working's very clear. I have to make sure I've read the question, which tells me about some outliers. The 10 and the 15 were considered outliers. So this minimum value of 10 and this other value of 15, I'm going to show slightly differently. The way we show outliers on a box and whisker diagram is we show them as separate x's of their own. So I'm going to put my cross for the 10 and a cross for the 15. Now what that means is that the lowest other value I've got, if I remove that, the next lowest value is it this 23? Can I see anything else below 23? No, I can't. So my lowest value of my set is now at 23. That's going to be the end of my diagram. The lower quartile is at 29, which is going to be here. My median is at 38.5, which is going to be there. My upper quartile is at 42, and the very highest value was at 57, which we've not been told to take as an outlier, so I'm going to do that normally. So now I have to complete the box on this section and put in the whiskery bits. So there's my diagram. Now this end of it is kind of a bit dubious anyway. This business with the ends of the whiskers and with the outliers, these are by definition extreme values anyway, so I wouldn't get too worried by them, but this is how we show outliers if we're told to. Okay, label this is group 2, and now I'm on to the interesting bit, which is actually saying what does this show me about their scores. So we need to make a statement about averages. So we can see that group 2, median here, okay, had a much higher median than group 1, so therefore in context, group 2 got higher scores on average. So I've used a wording. I've used tended to, because it's good to give weak wordings as statistical conclusions. I've said test scores because I want to be firmly in context. And of course, I've mentioned group 1 and group 2, and I've said on average. The variability of the scores, well, for that, I'm going to go by the interquartile range, which on the diagram is shown by the length of the box. Now, I could actually do some subtractions, but by visual impression, I cannot see that there's a difference in the lengths of those boxes. So I'm talking about test scores because I want to be in context. And I said the test scores of the groups were about as variable as each other. Or I could say the variability was about the same for the two groups. Symmetry and skewness. Well, the first one, group 1, has similar scores, which means that the spread of the scores above the median. So here are the scores between the median and the upper quartile, and the gap there is about the same as the gap between the median and the lower quartile. Whereas for this group here, I can see that the group, the 25% of scores immediately above the median, are much more compressed than the groups below the median. So this is called skew. And because it's the scores below the median that were more spread out, I can say this is negative skew. But I need to put that in context. So I'm talking about scores because I need to be in context. The 25% of scores immediately above the median were much less spread than those below. And that's negative skew. Okay, but it's the bit not in brackets, it's going to get you most marks, I think. Okay, whereas the scores in group 1 were symmetrically distributed because in the diagram we've got an equal spread above and below the median. And I don't pay much attention to the highest and lowest values in this because they're just extremes. Okay, so I've said the distribution of scores in group 1 was fairly symmetrical. Okay, I'm struggling to squeeze all this in. Now I've got to comment on the pass rates. Well, go back to the question for information about what the pass mark was. Pass mark was 32. So I can see here that, okay, 32, well, 32 is actually above the median. So for group 1, so that means the median person failed this test. Less than half of group 1 passed. We're certainly more than half of group 2. We can't say for sure that it's nearly 3/4 of them, but it's suggestive that it might have been. So we can say that in group 1, less than half the group passed, but in group 2, comfortably more than half the group passed. So there's that comment. Okay. Scores of the top or bottom 25% in each class. So I can choose, I could comment on both. All right, but I think the one that I want to comment on is here and here. Okay, so the bottom scorers, the 25% who scored worst in group 1, this is approximately the same mark as the very lowest person who wasn't an outlier in group 2. So accepting outliers, okay, it seems that the bottom 25% of group 1 scored lower than nearly everybody in group 2. Okay, so there's my comment on that. And then high and low scores. Here's my highest in group 1, much worse than the highest in group 2. I'm not going to comment on the lowest scores because with these outliers it's a bit of a messy picture. So I'm just going to say the highest score in group 2 was much higher than I should really say the highest score in group 1. But I'm running out of space. Okay. What you should always be looking to do, it says at the bottom, is at the very least make sure we've compared one measure of location, in other words center, and one measure of spread. Okay, so I've compared, that's the first two comments, my average and my variability. But then with Boxplots there's lots you can comment on, so look for how many marks it's worth and try and make one comment per mark. And make sure that everything is in the context of the question, like what it says there. Okay, hope that helps.